5 simple steps over 5 videos on how to buy your first property. And this is video number 5. Hey, what's up guys, Dan Javidi here. I hope you're all well. As ever, if you could do me a huge favor and smash the like button and don't forget to hit subscribe. So this is video number 5. We've done mindset, type of property, all the costs, how you get the cash, and now video number 5 is all about how you pull the cash out. And this is probably the most relevant step if you want to take that step from buying one house and living in it and living happily ever after and moving on to other properties, multiple properties, bigger properties, whatever it may be. And this is really relevant for both first-time buyers and the buy-to-let investor. If you're an investor and you want to grow your portfolio, recycling your cash is absolutely critical to being able to buy your next property, because eventually you are going to run out of cash. So going through all the previous steps is vital in order to do this next step. If you're a first-time buyer, entering the property ladder, unless you've got a trust fund or a rich nanny and granddad, does mean that you are coming in at an entry-level property, something like a 1-bedroom flat or a starter home or a mezzanine level studio apartment, whatever it may be. And as time goes on and your family gets bigger and your aspirations get larger, you want to go on to bigger and better properties. And being able to recycle your cash out, whether that's refinancing or selling, is absolutely critical to being able to do that. So let's get straight into it, and let's start with getting the cash out, which one of the obvious ways is by selling your property. If you've followed my steps in the previous videos, you will definitely be in a position now where you've created some equity. Now, breaking it down, if this is for you to live in, you have something called prime residence relief, which means that you can sell that property and all of the profit that you make is 100% for you. It's not taxable, which enables you to go on and scale up on the housing ladder. Of course, there is a current review into capital gains tax, and I have done a video on this subject completely separately, and I'll put a link in the comments below. So things may change, but I don't think they will do for your main home. If you're an investor, now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. If you're buying to hold and that is your intention, and then you eventually sell that property, then that gain, if it's in your personal name, is liable for something called capital gains tax. And depending on how much tax and how much income you have from other sources will depend on how much. Again, watch my video about this subject because I go into a bit more detail about that. If you're buying properties to flip and sell in your personal name, then that is classed as a trade, and there's a different band and a different way that income is treated for tax, similar to being employed or self-employed. So we need to be really mindful that selling a property is a great way to release the cash, and there is nothing better than cash in the bank when you're looking for the next deal. However, be very mindful that comes with a price in the form of tax if it is for any other property other than your main residence. So that kind of takes us really nicely onto refinancing, and this is how I really did start to build my own portfolio. And then when I went on to work with investors, we were recycling their cash out and buying multiple properties with multiple investors, building a substantial portfolio. If we just park the issue of buying in your personal name, buying to live in, or buying in a limited company for a second, when you buy something and add value, or the market increases and you refinance with the same lender or a different lender, you are extracting money out of that property. You're increasing your debt based on the value increasing and your overall borrowing increasing along with that. That means that that cash is borrowed money and it's not liable for tax at that stage. So it is a great way to extract money out and go off and do other things, hopefully in property, without having to have a tax bill on that sum. But if you start to pull money out way beyond the purchase price over years, and you're starting to borrow money, which is effectively your profit, and you go to sell that deal, your tax liability will always be on the profit of that property if it's not your main home. And there are different ways to borrow the money. You don't always have to refinance. There's always lots of costs involved in that. Sometimes you can just go to the current lender and say, look, I'd like to borrow some more money. The value has gone up for X, Y, and Z reason. That's called a further advance. So they just increase your advance to lend you some more money. And it's a great way of speeding up the process and minimizing the fees to do so. So always have a chat with your existing lender about a further advance. But here's where I think it can really help. And this is where the two different topics in my videos in these 5 stages come together. And it's one of the secrets, and it's one of the ways I was able to make the leap from being a homeowner to a buy-to-let investor. And that's refinancing your own house, your current main residence, onto a buy-to-let mortgage, pulling more money out, and then going on to buy your next property, whether that's for you to live in or whether that's for another buy-to-let investment. Here's how that works. So you buy a property to live in and you use a pretty high loan to value mortgage because you haven't got a huge pot of cash. And you buy the worst property in the best area for the market that you're targeting. And you do the work, or you bring other people in, but you spend time whilst you're living in the property doing the work, and that can be 6 months or 6 years. It all depends on you, the property, and the amount of work that needs to be done. But instead of going to the existing lender or another residential lender, go to a buy-to-let lender. Tell them that you're intending to rent that property out and you want to switch it to a buy-to-let mortgage. And then you can then refinance and remove your existing residential mortgage onto a buy-to-let property, and then you move out of that property and your tenants move in. And it all happens within a really short space of time between the process starting and finishing. But it is a great way to buy properties, add value, pull money out, and build a portfolio at the early stages, especially if you're doing it with little to next to no money and you're really trying to figure out how you scale up a portfolio. Well, there is no harm in doing this. Now, you have to be really careful. If you refinance on a buy-to-let and then something happens and you live in that property, you can't do that. You need to be mindful that it's now a buy-to-let property, and without permission from the lender, you're going to have to move house. And equally, you might have an existing lender who has an early repayment charge on that property. Now, there are ways around it. You can always port that mortgage onto the next property that you're buying as long as you're going to live in it. So there's always ways around it, and there's lots of things you can and can't do. My advice would be go and have a conversation with a broker. But refinancing is absolutely critical in order to build from this single property that you've just about bought. And this is why I've left this video right to the end, and why all the other stages are so important, because without any one of those stages, you can't refinance. If you buy yourself into a position where you fall into negative equity, you can't refinance. And if you buy yourself into a position that you've spent more money on the project than the project is actually worth, you can't refinance on the profit because there is no profit. So that's why the stages have been thought through and put in this order. But refinancing or selling, whatever you want to do, is the way to progress. Now, I've always sold properties. I like to flip them over. A lot of people say to me, why do you sell these properties when they're giving you great returns? But for me, refinancing only ever gives you so much of the cash in the pot. When you sell, you materialize all of the cash in the deal. And sometimes when the right tax circumstances take effect, that can be a great way to release cash and go and buy multiple properties. And then as you start to get familiar with that strategy, you'll find that there are actually lenders out there who encourage this, and they have specific types of products for you to buy something and refinance it once you've done the work and added the value. And that can happen within weeks of your purchase. We don't have to wait months or even years. They're called bridge to let or bridge to term products. So do speak to your broker. And if you don't have a broker, or your broker doesn't have access to those types of products, leave me a little comment and I'll happily introduce you to one of mine. But that's it from me. That's the last video in this series. I hope you've enjoyed them. Don't forget to do me a huge favor and smash the like button if you have enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave me a little comment if you've got any questions or suggestions on other videos. But I hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.